Once upon a time in a small, peaceful countryside village, surrounded by rolling hills and fields of green, there lived a simple farmer named David. David was not wealthy, nor did he seek fame or recognition, but within his heart, he carried a dream so precious and deeply personal that very few people around him could understand. On a quiet spring morning, David walked to a tiny patch of land at the edge of the forest. The air was cool, the birds were singing softly, and the world seemed still. In his hand he held a single small seed, a bamboo seed. For many it would seem insignificant, just an ordinary seed. But for David it symbolized hope. It was a promise to himself. A promise that he would nurture this seed until it became something extraordinary. David knelt on the soft earth, dug a small hole, and gently placed the seed inside. He covered it carefully, patted the soil flat, and whispered, almost as if speaking to a child, "Grow, little one. I believe in you." Every morning from that day forward, David returned to that same spot. He carried a small clay pot filled with water and poured it gently over the soil. He checked the ground carefully, waiting for any sign of life. And each day he whispered his quiet prayer to the earth, "I believe in you. I'll be here when you're ready." Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The seasons changed. The warm glow of summer gave way to the falling leaves of autumn, which then surrendered to the biting winds of winter. Yet through it all, David never missed a single day. A whole year passed, and nothing happened. By the second year, the people in his village began to notice David's routine. They would watch him walking toward the forest each morning and shake their heads. "There goes David," they would whisper among themselves, still watering that dead seed. Some were amused, others concerned. One afternoon, an older neighbor named Samuel approached David and said, "David, my friend, I don't mean to offend you, but you've been doing this for so long. Maybe it's time to plant something else. Something that actually grows. Corn, maybe, or beans. Something you can harvest and sell. Why waste your time on this?" David smiled gently, his face calm and steady. "Thank you, Samuel," he said softly. "But I made a promise to this seed, and to myself. Dreams take time, and I'm willing to wait." Samuel shook his head and walked away, muttering under his breath, "That man's too stubborn for his own good." The second year passed. The soil remained untouched, unchanged, silent. By the third year, laughter became more frequent. Children would tease David when they saw him walking with his little clay pot. "Mr. Bamboo," they called him, giggling as they ran past. Even some of the adults joined in, mocking his faith in something they could not see. But David never fought back. He simply smiled and kept walking. Inside, though, he had his doubts. At night, when the house was quiet, and the only sound was the wind rattling the windows, David would lie awake staring at the ceiling and whisper to himself, "Am I being foolish? Am I wasting my life on a seed that will never grow?" One evening, sitting by the fireplace, his wife Emily placed a gentle hand on his arm. "David," she said softly, "I know how much this means to you, but we have other needs. Maybe it's time to let it go. Maybe it's time to try something different." David looked into her eyes and took a deep breath. "Emily," he said, his voice steady but tender, "I understand your worries. I really do. But something deep inside me keeps telling me to wait. I can't explain it, but I feel it. I believe there's life in that seed. And if I walk away now, I'll never forgive myself." Emily smiled faintly, though her eyes carried concern, and simply nodded. The fourth year arrived. Nothing changed. The tiny patch of land still looked barren, dry, and lifeless. David kept watering. He kept believing. But sometimes even his faith felt fragile. There were days when he stood there in silence, holding his pot, staring at the soil, wondering why he was doing this. There were mornings when his hands trembled and his heart whispered, "Give up. No one will blame you." But he didn't. Then came the fifth year. The villagers had stopped laughing by now. Most had given up trying to convince him to quit. To them, David was just that man with the dead seed, living in his own strange little world. But even as the doubts gnawed at him, David kept going. 5 years. 5 years of watering, waiting, and hoping. 5 years of faith without evidence. 5 years of ridicule and whispers behind his back. And then came the 6th year. It was a quiet morning like so many others before. David walked to the patch of land, clay pot in hand, lost in thought. As he approached, something unusual caught his eye. The ground looked different. He frowned and knelt down, brushing away a bit of soil. And then he saw it. A tiny crack in the earth. David's breath caught in his throat. He leaned closer, and there, breaking through the soil, was the smallest, most delicate green shoot he had ever seen. His heart pounded. Tears filled his eyes. After 5 long years of nothing, life had finally arrived. "Emily," he shouted, his voice trembling. "Emily, come quickly." She came running, and when she saw the fragile little shoot, she covered her mouth in disbelief. "It's real," she whispered. "It's actually real." And that was only the beginning. Over the next 6 weeks, something extraordinary happened. The bamboo began to grow, and grow, and grow. 10 feet, 20 feet, 40 feet, 60 feet, 80 feet high, stretching endlessly toward the sky. The villagers gathered around in astonishment. Their laughter had turned into silence, their doubt into awe. "How is this possible?" they asked. 5 years of nothing. And now this? David stood before them, smiling softly. "The bamboo wasn't doing nothing," he said gently. "All this time it was growing roots, deep, strong roots to hold its towering strength. It was preparing itself, just like our dreams." From that day on, the bamboo grove became a symbol for the entire village. People would visit David's field when they felt like giving up. They would stand beneath the towering stalks, close their eyes, and remember one simple truth: growth takes time. Years later, David would sit beneath the shade of those magnificent bamboo trees, surrounded by children who loved hearing his story. "Listen carefully," he would tell them, his voice soft and warm. "There will be times when it feels like nothing is happening. You'll work hard, you'll give your heart, and you won't see results. But that doesn't mean nothing is happening. Life is working beneath the surface. You're growing, even when you can't see it." The children would nod, their eyes wide with wonder, and David would smile. "Never stop believing in your dreams," he'd say. "Water them every day, even when nothing seems to change. Be patient. Trust the process. Your time will come." And as the wind blew gently through the towering bamboo, the stalks would sway and whisper to anyone willing to listen. "Be patient. Keep going. Your time will come."